Philly or with Boston yesterday, what were your thoughts on them not calling a timeout? And then, do you just like in general with that last play, is it understandable why they got into it so late? Is there something that people are missing? Because it did feel just casually watching it like they were really taking their time in a way that it wasn't surprising at all. They weren't able to get a shot off.
Yeah. It's funny because one of the games I called this year was the Boston Knicks game in March, which was an awesome game, double overtime game. And forgive me, but I can't remember if this was at the end of the first overtime or at the end of regulation, but similar thing where they're trying to get into a set and, you know, that one was tied and Tatum like catches the ball with like 3 seconds to go or 4 seconds to go. It's weird because I feel like you go back to game one where they've got a chance to win the game and they throw it into Marcus Smart and he goes quick. And I don't know what was the plan on the backside, but Tatum clearly saw Smart go and he cut and it went out of bounds or whatever. But the late game execution, I think at times is a little spotty for Boston. And Jaylen Brown admitted that he wasn't supposed to be doubling. You're taught you don't double off the strong side corner. And if they were going to double, truthfully, Al Horford was guarding someone in the dunker spot. And the spacing wasn't great. You could have sent Al, who had been great up to that point in late in the game against Joel. So really shocking play there, and then really shocking that they got into it so late. I think it was around 4.9 seconds when he initiated this drive. And again, you can do that in a tie game. You can do that in a tie game. The strategy in a tie game, get the last shot. Worst case, you go to overtime. In a game you're down, you want to go. It's not even about getting the last shot. It's about creating a good look. And you think about, too, is like, had he just gone earlier and the same thing happened, let's say Smart, whatever, they're in rotation, right? You had I think it was Derek White up at the top of the key, if I'm not mistaken. So like, there's a snowball effect, right? It's a swing, it's an open look. And like, they never had time to do any of that. So I didn't have a problem with no timeout. I never have that problem. If you trust your guys and they get into that V2 set, which they try to get to late game a lot, create switches, create mismatches, Tatum coming off a DHO, maybe a rip screen, maybe a flare. Like they do a bunch of stuff out of that set. No problem with that. Let's give some love to James Harden. 2 game winners in this series in 40-point games. Plus he had the floater on Horford. Why they keep going to that matchup late game, I have no idea. But on Horford to get them to overtime, great nugget. Second player over the last 25 years to record multiple games with 40 points and go-ahead field goals in the final 30 seconds of a playoff series. The last guy to do that was LeBron in 2006 versus the Wizards.
47 30-point playoff games for Harden now. Pretty crazy number.
He likes to. I know he said this. Like I think maybe he said this, but I know there's like James Harden is a generational player. like he's a generational player, and it's good. It's good to see him doing what he's doing on the court right now because he's been so maligned at times. And he won his matchup against Jaylen Brown yesterday. Brown, when he guarded him in game 3, Harden was 0 for 7 yesterday, 5 for 8. The jumpers, which I think is probably the most surprising thing, is just how good his jump shot has been, especially in game 1 and game 4. He made 13 jumpers in game 1. Yesterday, 10 of 14 in game 4. More importantly, 7 of 10 in the paint yesterday. He was 14 of 50 in the postseason prior to yesterday. So just like an awesome game from him, clutch buckets, all that stuff. We got 2-2 series. We need tonight. We need more 2-2 series.
Yeah, we need all.
I want these series to go deep because all these series are so good.
The other guy I was going to shout out was PJ Tucker. I mean, the and one with a minute left was obviously huge, but then also he had an offense. He forced an offensive rebound in OT, which ended up going out of bounds, ended up being a Philly ball, which they scored off of. And both those plays, you're like, this is why he's here, and he just is just he's a winner. And I think that is it's a difference. I think it feels like with this Philly team, if they can make a run, it's going to be obviously the stars, but it's guys like that too.
For sure. And it's D'Anthony Melton. It's George Niang, who had a big game yesterday. This is the thing about this Philly team. If they're getting great games from James and they're getting great games from Joel, and they have three guys. I mean, they have legit. Obviously, Maxi's a star. Tobias has been a star and is a great role player at this point on in this current role. But they have a bunch of guys that can be Alfreds, Tommy. They have a bunch of guys.
Yeah.
And so when that happens, when you get the best version of James, the best version of Joel, and you get 2 or 3 Alfreds stepping up, dude, they're as good as anyone. They're as good as anyone. And this is the other part. I just want to, I'll end with this because we got to roll. But I'm just like, I'm always fascinated. I'm fascinated by the knee-jerk reaction to one game in a series. I think back to even last year where that Dallas series against Phoenix, where it was like after the first 2 games, you're like, oh man, Dallas has no chance. Phoenix is done. Then they come back, they get hot, games 3 and 4. Luka's spraying the ball all over the place. They're knocking down threes, and they come back to Phoenix, and Phoenix whoops their ass, and they're like, okay. I'm sorry. I thought for a second there Dallas had a chance, and then they just kicked their ass in game 6 and 7. And so this is the fun part, right? What Monty did, right? The adjustments there. I think Doc has some options in terms of rotations and starters, right? Game to game. This is the fun part of the playoffs. It's not just about one game. And you see that all the time, right? Harden talked about that, after game 2 when they got their ass kicked. Like, I'm not going to get super high because we won game 1 and then super low because we lost by whatever in game 2. Like, you have to look at it as a series. You have to look at it as the next game is the most important game. It's not about what just happened.
Yeah, so there were Philly fans that wanted to ship James out after game 3. They were like, send him to Houston.
Glad they didn't.
I think they're glad he didn't too.